Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely, because if you're here right now, it means your heart has been carrying a weight that you don't talk about to most people. It means you wake up and the first thought is still her. It means you go to sleep and the last thing you see is the memory of what you had, what you lost, and what you wish you could fix. And I know how that feels, not as a theory, but as a human truth, when your mind keeps reopening the same wound, and every day feels like you're trying to breathe through a tight chest. But I'm going to tell you something that might save you from months, even years of suffering. You need to understand, getting a woman back is not about the perfect message. It's not about the perfect apology. It's not about the perfect grand gesture that suddenly rewinds time and makes her realize she made a mistake. Most men do exactly that. They write paragraphs, they beg, they explain, they promise change, they send voice notes with shaking hands and a breaking voice, hoping the emotion will convince her. And what happens? She pulls further away. She becomes colder. She feels pressure. She feels responsible for your emotions. And the more you chase, the more she protects herself from you. And that's why this is going to feel backwards. Because the move that actually brings you back to power is the move your emotions hate the most. The move that actually restores attraction is the move that your fear fights like a wild animal. The move is not to chase her. The move is to stop living like she is the oxygen in your lungs. I want you to hear this with your full attention. You need to understand the fastest way to lose her respect is to show her that you have no life without her. Not because she's evil, not because women don't care, but because deep down, every healthy woman wants a man who is solid, a man who stands in his own identity, a man who has direction, purpose, and emotional strength. When she feels like she is your entire world, it stops feeling like love and starts feeling like a job. It stops feeling romantic and starts feeling heavy. It doesn't make her feel special. It makes her feel trapped. It makes her feel like if she stays, she has to carry your happiness on her shoulders. And that is a burden nobody wants. Now, I know what your mind is saying, but I loved her. I was loyal. I was devoted. I gave my all. I understand. But you need to understand. Devotion without self-respect becomes neediness, and neediness becomes pressure. Love is not supposed to be a chain around someone's neck. Love is supposed to be a choice you make from strength, not a desperate grip you hold from fear. So here's the first shift. You stop trying to get her back and you start trying to get yourself back. Because the man she left most of the time is not the man she fell for. The man she fell for had a life. He had friends, he had goals, he had a mission, he had standards, he had a spark. He had an identity that wasn't begging for validation, and somewhere along the way, you may have unknowingly started shrinking your world until it revolved around her. You started checking her mood to decide your mood. You started waiting for her reply to decide whether you were okay. You started organizing your day around her attention, and then slowly, your energy changed, your confidence changed, your edge disappeared, and she felt it. You need to understand, attraction is not just about how much you care. Attraction is about how you carry yourself. Attraction is about emotional independence. Attraction is about your ability to love without losing yourself. Now let's talk about the thing that is destroying you right now, even if you haven't said a word to her. It's not your silence, it's your obsession. It's the constant mental chasing, the replaying, the analyzing, the what if I said this, the maybe if I did that. The checking her social media like you're looking for a sign from God. Every time you do that, you reinforce a message in your own mind. I cannot be okay until she chooses me again. And that message turns into your identity. And once it becomes your identity, you start acting like a man who is waiting. You start moving like a man who is paused. You start living like a man who is unfinished. And nothing is less attractive than a man who is unfinished and expects a woman to complete him. So the first phase of your transformation is simple but brutal. You cut the mental umbilical cord. You stop feeding the obsession. You stop checking. You stop searching for updates. You stop collecting information that only keeps you addicted. Because you need to understand what you feed grows. If you feed obsession, you grow obsession. If you feed discipline, you grow strength. If you feed purpose, you grow power. Now, I'm not telling you to become cold. I'm not telling you to become bitter. I'm not telling you to hate her. I'm telling you to become stable. I'm telling you to stop letting your emotions run your life like a dictator. Because a man who can't control his focus will always chase love like a drug. And once you begin to detach, here comes the paradox. The more you stop needing her, the more you become attractive again, not because you're playing a trick, but because you're returning to your center. You need to understand, a woman can feel the difference between a man who wants her and a man who needs her. Want is healthy. Need is heavy. Want is confident. Need is desperate. Want says, I choose you. Need says, I can't survive without you. And that second one, no matter how romantic you try to make it sound, does not feel like love to her. It feels like suffocation. Now let's talk about what you actually do day by day while you're not talking to her, while you're not chasing, while you're rebuilding. Because most men stay stuck because they only stop texting, but they don't stop waiting. They don't stop hoping. They don't stop orbiting. They just sit in silence with their pain, expecting time to do the work. Time doesn't do the work. You do the work. The first thing you rebuild is your body, not for her, for you. Because when your body is weak, your mind is weak. When your body is disciplined, your mind becomes disciplined. You move every day, you lift, you run, you walk, you sweat, you push yourself beyond comfort. Not because you're trying to punish yourself, but because you're telling yourself, I still have control. Every workout becomes a vote for your future. Every drop of sweat becomes a reminder, I am not powerless. You need to understand, the man who trains his body is training his nervous system to handle discomfort without collapsing. That's what heartbreak demands. That's what leadership demands. The second thing you rebuild is your purpose. What are you building? What are you creating? What is the mission that makes you feel alive? Because when you have no purpose, your mind will turn romance into religion. It will worship one person. It will obsess over one person. It will chase one person for meaning. And that's why heartbreak destroys you, because you weren't just losing her, you were losing your meaning. You need to understand, your meaning can never be a person. Your meaning must be bigger than romance. It must be something you can hold with your own hands, something you can wake up for, something you can grow. The third thing you rebuild is your social life. You reconnect with the people you neglected. You stop isolating. You get out of your room. You get out of your head. You laugh again. You talk again. You live again. Because obsession grows in isolation. Healing grows in community. You don't need a crowd. You need connection. You need to understand, when you sit alone with your pain becomes your identity. When you move through life, your pain becomes a chapter, not the whole book. The fourth thing you rebuild is your inner strength, the part of you that doesn't break when someone leaves. This is where real men are made. You look at the patterns, not her patterns, your patterns. The insecurity that made you cling, the fear of abandonment that made you overtext, the jealousy that made you control, the low self-worth that made you tolerate disrespect, the anxiety that made you chase, and you face it. Therapy if you need it, journaling if you need it, books, mentors, prayer, deep conversations, honest reflection, whatever it takes. Because if you don't heal, you don't change. If you don't change, you repeat the same story, with her or with the next woman. You need to understand, getting her back without healing is not a victory. It's a delayed loss. Now, I want to address something carefully, because I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. I'm not going to guarantee she comes back. Nobody can promise that. And the moment someone promises that, you should be suspicious, because you can't control another human being. But you can control yourself, and you need to understand, when you become the man you were always meant to be, two things happen. Either she becomes curious again because she feels the difference in your energy, or you outgrow her because you realize you were begging for someone who didn't fit your future. Either way, you win, because you are no longer living as a man who needs someone to validate his worth. Now let's talk about the moment that breaks most men, the moment she reaches out. Maybe it's a simple, hey, maybe it's a random question, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's an apology, and your heart starts racing like your life has been given back to you. And in that moment, you want to dump everything. You want to tell her how much you missed her. You want to ask where you stand. You want to rush to meet. You want to grab the moment like it's the last boat out of a sinking ship. Don't. You need to understand, the goal is not to act indifferent. The goal is to be stable. Stability is not cold. Stability is calm. Stability says, I'm glad to hear from you, without saying, you are my salvation. Stability says, I'm doing well, without secretly screaming, please come back. Stability means you don't collapse the second she offers a crumb of attention. So you respond with warmth and brevity. You acknowledge. You don't over-explain. You don't pour your heart out. You don't bring up the relationship immediately. You keep it simple, respectful, grounded. Good to hear from you. I've been busy, doing well. Hope you're okay. And then you go back to your life, not as a tactic, as truth. Because if you've been rebuilding properly, you actually do have a life to go back to. You actually do have purpose. You actually do have movement. And that is what makes you magnetic, not the words, but the reality behind them. If she continues the conversation, great. If she doesn't, you don't spiral. You need to understand a man who is healed does not fall apart over a message. A man who is healed does not worship attention. He appreciates it, but he doesn't depend on it. And if she asks to meet, you don't beg for it. You suggest something simple. You offer a time. You keep it normal. You keep it calm. You don't treat it like a wedding proposal. You treat it like two adults catching up, because pressure ruins everything. Calm builds everything. Now here's the part I need you to hear, because it's the line between a boy and a man. If she comes back, you do not automatically take her back. You need to understand a man has standards. A man has boundaries. A man values his peace. You ask yourself, why did it end? What is different now? Is she coming back because she's grown or because she's lonely? Did she respect me? Did we bring out the best in each other? Can we rebuild trust with real actions, not just words? These questions are not revenge. These questions are self-respect, because the new you is not a man who lives to be chosen. The new you is a man who chooses. And I know this is emotional because part of you still wants to hear one sentence, she will come back. But the deeper truth is this: you need to understand your life cannot be built on the hope of someone else returning. Your life must be built on you returning to yourself. So here is the 17-minute truth, the one that actually changes your future. Stop chasing, stop waiting, stop begging reality to rewind. Start building. Build your body, build your mind, build your purpose, build your friendships, build your standards, build your peace. Become the kind of man who can love deeply without losing himself. Become the kind of man who doesn't panic in silence. Become the kind of man who doesn't need to be saved by a text message. And if she returns, she will meet a man who is different. Not a man who performed change, but a man who became change. A man who is warm, but not weak. A man who is clear, but not controlling. A man who has love, but also has self-respect. And then, only then, you can decide what happens next. But if she doesn't return, you still win, because you didn't rebuild for her. You rebuilt for you. You become the man you were always meant to be. Not the man who begs to be loved, but the man who is worthy of love because he finally learned to love himself with discipline, with standards, with truth. Ladies and gentlemen, your transformation is not her decision. Your transformation is your decision. You need to understand the moment you choose yourself, you stop being a man who hopes and you start being a man who leads. And that shift, that calm, that power, that is what makes you unstoppable.